What's up, YouTube? Know it's been a while. So this is the FZO9 swapped Honda Grom. Finally got it all together. It is 100% complete. We are going to be doing a couple more things, but just want to make this video just going over basically everything that it took to get this engine in this bike, and then all the little tidbits and extra little details on it. So this is a 22, or started out as a 22 Honda Grom, and the power plant is out of a 2015 Yamaha FZO9. It's considered like a 900cc. I call it a 900cc, but this is actually an 847cc engine, 3-cylinder. Basically had the Grom actually started from just a frame and a set of factory forks, factory swing arm, factory suspension, and factory 12-inch wheels. Then what I did is essentially set it up in a jig. I got the neck supported in the jig, and then the rear frame section supported in the jig, and I actually cut the center section out of the frame, moved the neck out about 3 inches, so it's stretched in the front 3 inches, and then I made my own frame rails and then welded and braced what was left of the frame in the rear. Try to go somewhat in order. So once I had the frame basically modified, got the engine up into there, and then I made my kick downs in the front and some cross braces for the front engine mounts, and then the rear engine mounts are off of what I added and what was left of the factory Grom frame. This frame, I don't honestly think another person is gonna do like a 3-cylinder like this, at least for a while, unless they're super dedicated in cutting up and modifying the frame, because what's left of the factory frame is literally this bit and the VIN number of the Grom. The rest is all my own fabrication tubing, and then the rear is all fabricated, and actually it's only a sliver of the factory frame, and then I have actually cut out the factory frame. It's kind of hard to see, but I basically boxed in the rear engine mount, because maybe this is a better way of showing it. So the factory frame sits right here, and this rear engine mount is right where that silver washer is. So it's actually past or just inside of what would have been left of the factory frame. So this is all cut out, boxed in around that engine mount, and then the rest of the frame is welded and braced and secured that way. So this isn't just like I fit the engine up in there and made some engine mounts. I actually had to put this all in a jig, cut that center section out, and then cut out the rear frame so that I could make my own essentially frame and engine mounts all in one. So that took a lot of time, and there's a couple different ideas I had, but I think this came out pretty much the cleanest. It is sad because it's done so well, and it's not really modified that much, but it is. It's kind of hard to say, but you would never know that it took that amount of work, basically cutting out all this and remaking this whole section of frame, because it basically hides behind all the bodywork and the powder coating and everything. So the next thing was the swing arm. So this is an Evil swing arm that's a 6 to 10 inch stretch with a 20 millimeter rear axle, and it has the bracing from Evil. I also had to modify this guy. So this guy here is an external fuel tank. I'll get into that when I go over the fuel system, but essentially had to notch out this tube and re-weld it to get my tank back to fit my shock. The swing arm, the biggest upgrade is a 20 millimeter axle, and then I did do a 15 millimeter swing arm pivot that I had machined for this, and basically swapped out everything to switch from the factory 12 millimeter to a 15 millimeter. I figured since I was going to that length of modifying the frame, and this engine is so much heavier, and it goes from 8 horsepower to almost 100 horsepower. So with all the power and weight, I figured doing the swing arm pivot was probably the best idea. So we did that. That took some kind of figuring out and modifying and going to the machine shop and back to figure that out. But it does have an upgraded rear axle and swing arm pivot. Then the next thing, I guess, would be fabrication wise is the fuel tanks. So this uses the factory fuel tank, factory fill hat, and it's modified, cut, and basically just made to go around the engine and the frame that's there. So it's lengthened in the front, cut out in the back, and then it drops down. This tank, I believe, held one gallon or 1 point something, and I had to cut a lot of it out to fit the cylinder head up there and the throttle bodies. So that tank's stock appearing, but it's modified to the nth degree underneath, and then it uses a 1/2 inch fuel line to go from the bottom of the tank over to this tank, and then I have a couple vent lines and whatnot. And then it has the factory FZO9 fuel hat mounted into the rear of this tank, and then it has a fuel line that goes up to the fuel rail. So this is like maybe like a easier-ish fix other than stopping all the time for fuel. This holds over 2 gallons of fuel, which is pretty decent for a Grom because there's not a lot of places to put it. The fire extinguisher, or this started out as a fire extinguisher that I cut and modified. Some people like it, some people think it's stupid. I kind of like it because you're not stopping every 30 miles for fuel. Because with that 1 gallon tank, this thing would just be from gas station to gas station. But yeah, that's basically all the fabrication. So I'll take a second here to put you guys up to show some of the frame on this thing. There's not much to tell. Most of these Groms are built similar, or most of these engine swaps are similar. So let me stop and say a huge shout out to Morg Minimoto. He hooked me up with a set of his quick latch fasteners for these 22 Grom plastics. I believe they work with the 22 and 23, whatever the Gen 3 Grom is. So all we got to do is just pop these little guys off. Now some of the wiring is a little, just needs to be cleaned up a little bit more. I kind of got this thing together. To take it to Texas real quick, and then I'll do some more cleaning up before we're going to Tennessee. So Smoky Mountain Small Bore Rally. So essentially this is the frame. It's all 1-inch OD tubing. It's DOM tubing, and it's 1/8 inch wall thick. So I have my kick downs for the front engine mount, and then these are my parallel frame rails, basically mirrored on the other side. Got a brace, and then what I like to do is I like to do 1/8 inch plate, since I'm using 1/8 inch tubing, and I weld 1/8 inch plate to, if I can move that a little bit. So 1/8 inch plate is basically bracing the whole triple neck. That's what these mount to. And then in the rear, you're not going to be able to see it because of the wiring, but use 1/8 inch plate to build up the rear, and then this engine mount goes back to that. Also on this guy, you're not going to be able to see it too well, but got my top bar, my lower bar to the front engine mount. Then I actually built in some extra gussets just because I didn't really want to just depend on the 2 bars. So I thought adding a 3rd one will just add to the safety of it. But yeah, that's what this thing looks like underneath. The fuel tank, you really can't see how it's all modified because it's so crammed in there. But essentially the factory fuel tank sits about maybe down here. So got some cut out of it. It's channeled here, dropped down in the front. I've got a transfer line from the front back to the middle of the gas tank. That way whatever in the front can drain back and it's actually usable. And then this whole bit it comes down to like way down here. So it's heavily modified, but you need the gas tank to retain like the factory mounting locations, clips for the bodywork. So that is how this thing looks like. It is definitely stuffed and crammed in there. On this bike, I used the factory FZO9 wiring harness. There's only so much you can do with the wiring harness, especially the factory one. So I cut all the tape and everything off it and kind of bundled it up the best I could. And honestly, I think it came out really clean. You do have some stuff that's kind of like hanging, but those just need to be zip tied up. And then you still have your fuse boxes and everything you can get to. And then you just have one bundle of wires going up to the hand controls and the dash. So let me put the bodywork back on this thing. Maybe I can show y'all how easy this is if it works with me. It might work with me here. So this bottom guy, all these things do is just clip in. The bottom one might be a little funky. I have to get on the clips just perfect. And then the top one, probably just gonna be looking at my back, but clip in this bottom guy. body work up there, and that's it. So really like those quick latch fasteners from Morg Mini Moto. I really like running these 22 and 23 Groms just because of that fact. All the other body work you pretty much have to use screws on. So let me get my train of thought. So bodywork wise, everything is factory. I have not modified any of the mounting locations. I did make this mounting location only because nothing is left there from the factory Grom, but it uses all the factory mounting locations, and the bodywork is not really modified at all except for some small cutouts for the engine. Got one little cutout on the bottom of this guy, but my goal with this build and essentially all my builds is to make it as factory appearing as possible. Obviously, we're taking a step away from that because the neck is stretched out, and that is fairly noticeable when you move it up to a factory Grom. What can I talk about next? I suppose the suspension. So Racing Bros suspension actually sponsored this build. They hooked me up with a set of their brand new Airstrike forks in the front that have the billet lower stanchions. So this is like an air shock setup. So on one side you have compression, on the other side is rebound, and you put air in it. Just a really cool upgrade to do. They're all black. I wanted to do a full black build on this guy. And then in the rear, we're running their, I believe it's Chicane HLR or Edge HLR 22 and up Grom shock that has the reservoir on the side, and the spring is, I believe it's released yet. I don't know. I've been saying I don't know if it's released for like 6 months now, but this has their 175 spring rate. I don't know if it's Newton meters or millimeter pounds or whatever it is, but anyways, this is a 175. I believe, if it's not out yet, I believe the highest you could get was a 130. So this is a huge upgrade for the added weight. The suspension on this bike feels really good. It's fairly stiff for even how much weight we added to it. This handles way better than the R7 swap Grom that I had before, that just had the spring upgrade and kind of their middle of the road Racing Bros rear shock with their 130 spring. So really happy with how the suspension got set up on this thing. Really happy that Racing Bros got on board with this build. I think it's really cool of them, and I can't say enough about them. And then in the rear, so this was a little bit of a iffy thing. I didn't know if I wanted to go with this shock. Of course, they sent it, and then I got it, and I was like, oh, I don't know how this is gonna work. So with this Chicane shock, usually the reservoir is mounted, more perpendicular to the actual shock itself. So when I first got the shock, I kind of put it in there, and I was like, oh crap, how am I gonna mount this tank in there when the shock is basically hitting it? So got with Kai over at Racing Bros. I sent the shock back, had this guy clocked a little bit differently to be as close to the actual shock body itself to get this out of the way, and then in the rear mounted this tank. And even then I still had to modify the swing arm, cut it out, and get it back another, I don't know, ½ inch or so. So a lot of little modifications to make all that stuff work, but overall really happy with how this bike handles. Next thing is probably the brakes. So not really necessary, because these big engine swaps, they engine brake super hard, super aggressively, just because there's no weight for this engine to pull down at speed. But wanted to go with a big brake kit in the front, so went with a Brembo 4P caliper, and then I ended up doing a oversized 245 millimeter rotor. And then Nemoto over in Thailand, I don't know if this is gonna focus or not. So Nemoto over in Thailand, he makes this bracket that makes it possible to run this Brembo 4P 4-pot piston in the front with the 22 and up Grom fork lowers, or the lower stanchions. Being that this has ABS, this kind of mount gets a little weird, and for some reason nobody stateside or nobody like from Steady Garage carries anything that allows you to run that brake with a 22 and up lower fork stanchion. So really cool they got on board. He actually sent me that bracket and a couple other things, so huge shout out and thank you to them. You can check them out on Instagram. But yeah, I wanted to go with a really big brake setup in the front. And then obviously I think everybody's upgrade is a stainless braided line. And then I stuck with the factory FZO9 master cylinder. This thing just does not want to focus today. So this is actually a Brembo master cylinder off the FZO9. So this is a new one. I kind of ditched the master cylinders that came off the donor bike. It had been sitting for like 5 years and it was just not working out. I think some of the seals were bad on the inside, and it was just as much to upgrade and buy a new master cylinder rather than rebuild the old ones and still potentially have problems. So this front brake is really nice. It grabs pretty aggressively. I think it fits the build pretty well. And then in the rear, same deal. Went with, I believe this is, I can't remember the nomenclature of this guy, but I think it's a P34. I'm not sure. It's a 34 millimeter dual pot Brembo caliper in the rear, mounted underneath the rotor, and then stainless braided line here as well. And then we went with the Brembo master cylinder off the FZO9. So the brakes on this bike are really, really good. I think they fit the build pretty well. We're trying to go with like the black and little tidbits of red, and then black caliper in the back. Super happy with that. And then I guess the last thing to really talk about outside bodywork wise is the headlight. So when I built this, I wanted to get some sort of kind of look off like the FZ platform, so FZO7, FZO9. So I started looking into headlights. Like I do not like that factory Grom. I think they call this like the Cyclops headlight. It just looks horrible, I think. I don't know. And then having just that big headlight way out 3 inches out, I just wanted to do something. So this is a Kensto Moto headlight that actually goes on an FZO7, a Yamaha FZO7. So it's a little bit different. It kind of has like that alien, like the Alien movies, kind of like that look to it. The actual projector is really, really great. And then it's got parking lights and turn signals integrated. We did like a carbon fiber on it. This is something that a lot of people did not like at first. And then after I took the bike down to Texas a few weeks ago, and I got a lot of compliments on the headlight. Everybody that hated on it online saw it in person, and they're like, wow, it actually fits the build really well. So I'm really proud of that. I'm really happy with how that came out. Other modifications, I'll talk about the wheels in a second, but other modifications, we did a set of race bars and a stabilizer. Had to get the actual stabilizer modified and a bracket kind of mounting system made, or mounting plate made for this to run a set of race bars, because these usually do not have provisions to run race bars, because this uses an inch and an eighth fatty bar, and this is set up for mounting to a 7/8 inch bar mounting system. So the holes on these guys are way too far inward to actually screw into here. So this plate screws into the inch and an eighth holes, and then it has provisions to run your mounting system to run a 7/8 inch bar setup. So set of race bars, and then we mounted the dash up here. I did not know how that was gonna look or turn out, and it actually worked out really well. I thought this whole area would just be really ugly, and it actually just kind of blends in really, really well. I don't know why this is having such trouble focusing today. And then for the spot that obviously here to here is 3 inches of left out space, I was gonna move the dash and have it down here. Really happy one of my buddies talked me into moving it up there. And then down here, we just made like a little mount for our draggy system. Did take this bike to the track, talking about the draggy system. Took it to the track, the drag strip, and it ran a 690 with some really, really low gearing in the rear at like 103 or 104 miles an hour, which my goal on this was just to get into the six. The sixes, I'd like to see like 680, but I don't think I'm gonna have the bike long enough to find out if it'll go that. And really, there's no point on the street to have it be that fast, because you're just gonna get into trouble. All right, last little bit, I guess I can go over the wheels. before I get in the wheels, I'll go over the cooling system and the exhaust. So cooling system is actually an R7 radiator. I had an R7 radiator laying around from my R7 build, so I was like, let me just see how this works out. And it worked out great. It fit right into place. It's got some bugs on it, but it utilizes an aftermarket R7 radiator and an R7 fan that I just wired into the FZO9 electrical system, and it actually does really, really well. In Texas at like 85 degrees, 90 degrees during the day, this bike will not get over 200 degrees, period. So with the smaller radiator, you would think like I'd have cooling issues or this and that. No issues at all, stays cool. 200 degrees for these bikes, the FZO9 is nothing at all. So really happy about that. That worked out flawlessly. And then for the exhaust is just a generic eBay 3-in-1 header into the collector that is in front of the engine. There's some different variations on this. I actually had another header set up that had the collector down here. That didn't really work out. This is a little bit more sleek. It's more tight to the engine. So eBay header to a Kelpie slip-on exhaust. It is not as loud as you would think. It's actually got a nice tone to it. It's definitely not ear-piercing loud. On the highway, you can cruise and, you know, listen to music or whatever just fine. The wind noise is actually worse on this bike than anything because you don't have any front screen. So that's the radiator, exhaust, seat cover. I just did a Thrill Seekers seat cover, a little bit more grippy. Do have to replace this because it got destroyed, but put a little 900cc badge on it. Just little subtle stuff that I like. Just this bike came out really clean, I think. And then I had the 12-inch wheels, just the black OG SF wheels on it. Decided that I think this would look really good on a set of 13s. So ordered a set of 13s. When they came, they were actually the wrong color. So sent them out to a buddy. He powder coated them black and then machined down the front lip to give us a polished lip. So it's I don't even know, 13x5 in the front and a 13x6 in the rear with a set of, I believe they're Bridgestone battle axes. Front tire is stock sizing, height-wise, are pretty dang close. And then the rear is a fatty setup. So it's a 6-inch wheel with a 150 13-inch tire. It just added a lot to the actual look instead of having like the really small pie cutters on it. The 12-inch wheels were on a Kenda KD1 tire. Those are known to be pretty sticky, so ran those at the track. Didn't have really any issues with the bike hooking up. And then after I'd ran the time into the 6s that I wanted to, you know, that was a check in the box, goal completed. And I was like, well, let me get a set of 13s and try it. You know, everybody thought the 13 would spin on the street or just not act right. And actually, this bike dead hooks on the street, even with the aggressive gearing I have on it now. So I'm really, really surprised on that. So I guess the suspension, the weight, and everything's pretty much set up. It will power wheelie a little bit, but other than that, no issues. So I believe it's stretched out, I don't know, 7.5 inches right now. And the tire is actually hooking up so well that the rim is starting to spin inside of the tire. So really happy with the performance of this thing, even on a set of big and not so sticky tires. It just, everything worked out really well. So anyways, I think that's enough for this. It's gone on like almost 25 minutes now. So just wanted to do like a little overview of this thing. It is complete. I don't think I'm going to have this very much longer. So I'm going to try to get like a couple POV videos of me riding this thing and kind of talk about how it rides and the power and everything that really surprised me about this bike when I first, you know, threw a leg over it and took it down the road. So that is the FZO9 Swap Grom. I hope you guys at least made it through most of the video. Some rambling, but just wanted to share that with you. Y'all take it easy.